والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We began a few weeks ago a look at some of the hikmat or the wisdoms that are found in our acts of worship. That is an important topic that reminds us that although Islam has a number of rules that we follow, the purpose of our practice is not just to know how to follow those rules properly. And for example, before we pray, prepare our body, our clothing, our environment, and ready ourselves for the prayer. And then when we do the prayer, make sure that we are performing the right actions, saying and pronouncing the proper words of remembrance of Allah, or recitation of Quran, or supplication and dua, and taking care of all of the other conditions and requirements of the prayer. Sometimes that is the extent of our concern. Did I do it right? But those are the ahkam and the adab of prayer, the rules, and then the recommendations and the best practices. Those rules, those recommendations, those best practices are there to help us and to facilitate us to get the maximum benefit from the prayer. But they do not substitute for the substance and for the wisdom of that prayer. And these are progressive layers. Sometimes we're only able to understand a certain portion of what is the actual purpose and wisdom. And at other times, we are able to move one step or two steps further and gain a little bit of an insight into the deeper meaning of that prayer. Because there are so many variables that will affect how much I get out of the prayer, it is very important for me to be careful about the rules and recommendations. The ahkam and the adab, they help me out when my inner state and my feeling is not fully present. At least it prevents me from going and doing something that is not proper. So let's say, for example, I didn't have ahkam and adab in my relationship with my parents. Well, most of us, we love our parents, and we are grateful for all our parents do for us. And so even if we didn't have an Islamic obligation, and even if we didn't have Islamic recommendations, we would express our love, our affection, and our gratitude to our parents. But are there times when you are angry at your parents? Are there times when you may be frustrated or annoyed because they are not hearing you or not understanding you, or you feel that they are not understanding? Yes. And that is when those ahkam and adab, those requirements and those recommendations, they come to our assistance. That if I am feeling it, great. I don't even need to refer to what Islam requires of me. But when I am not feeling it, and there will be times then if I know the law, I will not do something that will bring the displeasure of Allah, or something that I may regret in the future. Now, the law, it guides me even when I am feeling it. So when I do feel love and affection for my parents, there are good and there are better and there are not so good ways to express that love or that affection. Wa alaikum assalam. But the laws of Islam and the recommendations of Islam, they guide us and they teach us to express that love and that gratitude in the best possible way. So we can very visibly see the importance of the law when I'm not feeling it inside. It guards me and it guides me, at least to say and to act and to express myself in a healthy way that's not going to bring regret or harm to myself or to my relationship or to others. But also in good times, that same law, it guides me, that same etiquette, it reminds me what is the best way to express my affection for my parent or for any other relationship. So salat is the same way. If you are always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then even without salat, you will be in a state of dhikr. But most of us, we have many different layers and moments of ghafla, forgetfulness and negligence. So prayer brings us back. And then when we are concentrating and remembering Allah, there are so many different ways that you can express your affection to Allah. Prayer or salah, it teaches us the very best way to express that affection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are the best words? What are the best positions or actions or movements? What are the best times? And what is the best environment and the best company in which to honor and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So they are mutually reinforcing. There is a value in those laws. But it is often the case that because we are so focused on doing it right, we forget that this is just one step. And then there is another step that is beyond that, which we are also to seek. Not with arrogance, that I need to have this effect. I'm going to concentrate in my prayer, and tonight I want to see Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa in a dream. And if I don't see my Prophet or my Imam in a dream, then I feel like either I have done something wrong or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being unfair to me. I did this wonderful act of worship and I'm not getting the result or the outcome or the feeling that I am seeking. That is not to go to the next step beyond the laws, but that is in fact to go backwards, because it is a demand and not a devotion. Prayer is a devotion and not a demand. So what is the next step? The next step is to, first of all, realize that there is an effect that our worship is supposed to have on our soul, on our feelings, on our priorities. Before you actually look at what is that effect, remember there should be an effect, and think about it and evaluate it. Wa alaikum salam. Imagine, for example, somebody who attends a majlis in which the tragedy of Karbala is mentioned. This is the family of the Prophet, the loved ones of the Prophet, and those who are the divinely appointed leaders of Islam. And sometimes I attend a majlis or I listen, but I don't feel the tears coming to my eyes. And sometimes there are people who will say that, well, because I didn't feel it, so I won't attend. either because they're busy or because they have other things going on. If I'm not feeling it, the proper response is to say, what is wrong with my thinking? What is wrong with my emotions? That what should affect me is not affecting me. If I see a terrible accident on the road as I'm driving, or some other terrible incident that occurs in front of my eyes, and I am not affected by it, and I go about my day as if nothing took place, then I should look within me and say, what is wrong? Do I have some kind of clinical illness? Have I become numb? Maybe am I suffering through some kind of emotional or maybe even physical problem? This is something that should affect me as a human being. And if it doesn't, then I don't say, well, I guess it's no big deal. I should say, there is a big deal, and I need to figure out what is wrong with me, or what is wrong in my life that I didn't feel it. And worse than any effect that happens in front of me, and we will all be affected by the grace of God, our emotions, our humanity is alive enough that if we see a terrible tragedy take place in front of our eyes, we will be affected. We may not even be able to go on and go to work or school or live our life as normal, because it will take us some time to grieve, to process, maybe to pray in order to come back to normal. Many of us have experienced events like that in our own lives. But then, if a tragedy that is greater than any such tragedy that can take place in front of my eyes is mentioned in front of me and I don't feel it, then I should think, what is it that is causing that? And sometimes we find an excuse that, well, I didn't like the speaker, or I was upset about the environment, or maybe there was something that was inauthentic, and I've done some research and I know a little bit more authentic narrations of the maqtal and the events of Karbala. Regardless, even if you are a great scholar, and even if the narration was beneath your level of scholarship, is there any debate? The essence of what took place in Karbala on the day of Ashura, does your scholarship tell you in some footnote that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was not surrounded, that he was not martyred, that the family of the Prophet was not made captives, that these tragedies did not take place? And if that essence is there, and it is true, and it is brought to my mind, but my heart is not able to feel it, then I shouldn't make an excuse about the environment, or about this, or about that. But I should look within and say, something is missing. Maybe I have busied myself with distractions and I have forgotten what is truly important. Maybe I have become self-absorbed and I am not as attentive to humanity, or as attentive to my community, or as attentive to my Creator and to my Prophet and my Imams, that what took place in their lives is not front and central in my own life. So the first step is to realize that worship should have an effect. And then we can talk about what that effect is. First step is to realize that when you hear the tragedy of Karbala, the only proper response for a mu'min is to be affected by it. And if I am not affected, then there is something that I need to change within. I shouldn't say, well, that is just the way things are, or the way things must be. There are certain choices and certain decisions that led me to be in a place where there is a curtain over my most sincere and most raw emotions, and I need to remove that curtain. Similarly, if I can pray Salatul Jumu'ah or another salat, and I don't feel like it should make me a different person, then no matter how good the congregation is, no matter how beautiful the masjid is, no matter how beautiful the qira'at is or the dua is, no matter how many other circumstances there may be that help me focus and concentrate, I will not get the benefit that I need to get from that prayer because I am not even thinking about the fact that there should be some effect beyond the superficial. And this is true in everything that pertains to our religion. Nothing in our religion is a coincidence or something that happens without a purpose. Even the names of our imams. There is a narration quoted by Shaykh Saduq in the book Imam al-Asr that is mentioned by Shaykh Jawadi Amili in this book, Hikmat of the Ibadat, Hikmatul Ibadah. He says that a person came to our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, and said, why was the Prophet called Abul Qasim? And the Imam said that the Prophet had a son. The son's name was Qasim, and it was customary in Arabia to give a title or a name to a person on the basis of their son. So the Prophet was called Abul Qasim, the father of Qasim. And the narrator says, well, I know this, I know that history, but is there another deeper meaning? The Imam said, yes, there is a deeper meaning. And when we look at this deeper meaning, sometimes we look at it and we say that maybe this is not historical. That these deeper meanings are not meant to be something that can be understood superficially. The Imam said that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam is Qasimul Jannati wan Nar. He is the one who divides paradise and hell. Because it is the love and the obedience to Imam Ali that will be the attribute of the people of paradise. And it is the animosity to Imam Ali that is the attribute of the people of hell. So on the day of judgment among the ummah, it will be Imam Ali, who under the shadow of our Prophet, under the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will divide people into hell and heaven. And that division is called in Arabic Qasim. And therefore Qasim is the one who divides. And because Imam Ali, he will not do that independently. He was, through the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, raised by the Prophet, taught by the Prophet, and like a son for the Prophet, our Prophet is Abul Qasim, the father of the one who will divide heaven and hell. Is that, Sallu ala Muhammad? Is that historical? No. That's not the historical reason why people came to refer to the Prophet as Abul Qasim. According to narrations, Qasim was born even before the Prophet was announced as a prophet. So even the mushrikeen of Makkah who didn't know this was going to be the messenger of Allah, when he had a son Qasim, they would refer to him as Abul Qasim. That is the history. But then who chose that name Qasim for the son of the Prophet? Did Allah know that Prophet Muhammad was going to be a prophet? Did Allah give him that son? Did Allah guide him to give that name? Did Allah want there to be an association between our Prophet and the word Qasim and the different connotations of that word? Yes. And so although it isn't the historical reason, we cannot say that it is not a deeper meaning. I'll give one other example. According to one narration, also from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, Amir al-Mu'mineen was called Amir al-Mu'mineen because he gives them their rations of guidance and truth. And if you know Arabic, there is a root, mara yamiru, which means to give rations or to give food. And there is a root, amara ya'muru, which means to command. According to the rules of Arabic grammar, Amir al-Mu'mineen is derived from Amr, which means command. And Amir al-Mu'mineen is the commander of the faithful. But then Amir sounds similar to Mara Yamiru, which means to feed, to nourish. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have chosen any other title. If not Amir, it could have been Sayyid. It could have been Qa'id. It could have been another title. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the title Amir, maybe because of that similarity in sound and that connotation that comes to mind of nourishment and guidance from the Imam. That's not etymology. That's not grammar. And you're not going to authenticate or falsify this hadith on the basis of a dictionary. Because all a dictionary can tell you is what the history of that language is. But you can authenticate or falsify this hadith on the basis of its chain of transmission and who it is that that hadith is attributed to. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, he is our commander, but he is also the one who nourishes us with the message of Islam that he received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and from the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is a hidden meaning and a deeper meaning even in the names and the titles and the dates of the birth or the martyrdom of our Imams. And all of those, they are only accessible through the sayings and the guidance of Ahlul Bayt themselves. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And some of our ulama have mentioned that even this explanation of Abu al-Qasim, this is not necessarily the deepest meaning. That is all that the person asked about. But if they had asked more, then maybe the Imam would have given another meaning which is different, but also a further layer and a further meaning of what that title or that name or that attribute or that event in the life of the Ma'sumin represented. And all of those are simultaneously true. They are different layers and different levels of understanding and depth within the reality of ibadah. Some of you may have heard of the sermon of our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, in the court of Yazid. And in that court of Yazid, one of the things that Imam Zainul Abidin said is, he said, Anabnu Makkah wa Mina, Anamnu Zamzam wa Safa. I am the son of Makkah. I am the son of Mina. I am the son of Zamzam, the well, and As-Safa, the mountain from which Sa'i begins in Hajj and in Umrah. Now, of course, Imam Zainul Abidin, he was not the physical son, nor was it referring to the fact, as we will sometimes say colloquially in Arabic, that I am the son of my tribe or my homeland. That is kind of, even in English we say fatherland or motherland. Doesn't always have a good connotation in the way that it's used politically, but there is a figurative expression in many languages that your tribe or your land, your country, your nationality, that is your parent. It is not in this sense that Imam Zainul Abidin is saying that I am the son of Makkah or Mina, or the son of Zamzam or Safa or Marwa, but rather that all of these divine signs, they have a purpose. And that purpose is to remind us of the sacrifice of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the family of Ibrahim, and to guide us to also live our lives devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the outcome of that sacrifice, if we internalize the spirit of sacrifice and devoting ourselves to Allah, is to come to Ahlul Bayt and to follow and to obey them. And not only is that the outcome, but that is also the manifestation of their own lives. And so one of the meanings of our fourth Imam saying that I am the son of these divine signs may be to say that my life is the manifestation of that spirit of sacrifice. And knowledge of my imamat is the outcome of understanding what it means to live as a Muslim and what it means to remember and honor the sacrifice of Ibrahim and Ismail and the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And that is mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Hajj. Allah says about your sacrifice, لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى. Allah doesn't get the meat, and Allah doesn't get the blood of your sacrifice. People used to sacrifice, even non-Muslims, they would sacrifice to God or sometimes to their many idols, and they would take pride in the meat or the blood that they are offering to their God. Allah does not get that. وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى. But what comes to Allah is the piety. And that is the beginning for us to understand the secret of ibadah. When I pray, it isn't the outward fanciness of the prayer. When I do a majlis, it isn't the number of people or the outward element of that majlis that calls its depth and its acceptance to mind, but rather the intention and the taqwa. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us piety and taqwa so that we can understand the reason for why we serve Him and worship Him and not get distracted with the outward forms. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna a'ataynaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء وعلى الحسن والحسين وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. صلوات. I begin the second khutbah by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His bounties and for His favors. We were not worthy of all of those gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And there are many people who are more worthy and more pious than we are, who are suffering various forms of hardship and tests. We should remember them in our du'as, we should feel an obligation towards them, and we should feel an immense sense of humility and gratitude that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected us and honored us out of His mercy, but not out of our having earned or deserving those gifts. And that makes us feel responsible and devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us shukr, which is the cause of increase, and prevent us from self-satisfaction and arrogance, which is the cause of a separation and a loss of divine favor. And may He keep us always on the right path in our intention and in our words and in our actions. And if we ever feel like we have done enough, if we ever feel like now it is time for me to retire, if we ever feel like people are not thankful or appreciative, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be the one to broaden our horizon and give us another religious goal to put in front of ourselves, and remind us that the thanks and the appreciation that counts is not what somebody may say to me, but rather what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts of my actions. وَإِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. And of course, Allah only accepts that which is done truly and only for His sake. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. صلاة الجمعة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد